We have all encountered that exact high stakes moment where we know with absolute certainty that the person standing right in front of us is lying straight to our face. It could be a business partner hiding critical financial discrepancies, a colleague shifting the blame for a failed project onto someone else, or a close friend desperately trying to cover up a painful truth. In that split second, our raw biological human instinct screams at us to attack. We want to an immediate confrontation. We want to furiously launch a barrage of aggressive questions, cut them off mid sentence, or aggressively throw hard evidence on the table to prove them wrong. But according to the advanced laws of behavioral science and dark psychology, entering this confrontation trap is the single biggest tactical mistake you can, you can ever make. Okay? When you directly confront a liar with sharp questions or explosive anger, you are inadvertently handing them a massive psychological escape route. The moment you voice your accusation, you give their panic a clear direction. Their brain instantly enters a state of hypervigilance, the acts lighting up the amygdala and shifting their nervous system into an elite defensive mode. By analyzing the structure of your question, they can immediately deduce exactly how much real information you possess and where you are simply guessing. They take this free data, instantly calibrate their story, manufacture fresh excuses, and spin the narrative so fast that you end up questioning your own reality. By initiating a direct argument, you surrender total control of the room, turning the interaction into a debate where they can simply invent new lies to patch up the old ones. Legendary human relations pioneer Dale Carnegie, along with modern experts in neurolinguistic programming, discovered that exposing a deceptive individual has absolutely nothing to do with winning an argument. When you aggressively attack someone's lie, you instantly bind their ego to that deception. For them, admitting the truth now means suffering total public humiliation and completely losing status right in front of you. To avoid that emotional catastrophe, the human brain will double down and defend a lie to the absolute grave, no matter how ridiculous or transparent it begins to sound. If your ultimate goal is to make a liar completely drop their guard and willingly confess the truth without a fight, you must bypass their defenses entirely. You must deploy a silent, inescapable psychological trap that leverages their own nervous system against them, and it begins without saying a single word. A cinematic, high contrast medium shot of an intense corporate room with sharp shadows stretching across the wall, capturing the focused, unshakable gaze of an authoritative leader, fixing their eyes on a professional who is nervously fidgeting with a pen. When a person decides to look you in the eye and tell a deliberate lie, a massive chemical storm instantly detonates inside their body. Deception requires immense. Their brain must simultaneously suppress the truth, invent a plausible alternate reality, map out potential follow up questions, and carefully monitor their own facial expressions so they do not give themselves away. This intense mental gymnastics puts their entire nervous system into a state of extreme stress. Their heart rate spikes, their adrenaline surges, and their palms begin to sweat. A liar is playing a high stakes psychological game where they are constantly terrified that a single slip of the tongue or a nervous twitch will ruin everything. Because of this inner chaos, they enter the room expecting a reaction. They're desperately hoping that you will either blindly accept their story, allowing them to escape, or fire back with angry accusations. If you react with anger, you actually give them a sense of relief. Your anger is predictable. It provides them with a clear target, allowing them to play the victim, derail the conversation, and drag you into a shouting match where the facts get lost in the noise. But when they finish speaking their elaborate lie and brace themselves for the impact, and you respond with absolute unyielding silence, their entire mental architecture collapses. You are not playing the game they prepared for. To execute this flawlessly, you must lock your voice completely, erase every trace of emotion. No anger, no smugness, no smirk, and fix your gaze directly onto the bridge of their nose. This isn't just ordinary silence. In behavioral psychology, this is known as a strategic social vacuum. When you allow 3 to 5 agonizing seconds to pass without moving a muscle or blinking, the air in the room becomes impossibly heavy. Human beings are evolutionarily hardwired to despise social ambiguity, and a guilty mind finds silence utterly terrifying. Because you aren't speaking, the liar's brain is forced to interpret what your silence means. They instantly assume the worst, that you know everything, that their story completely failed, and that you are just sitting there watching them drown. The psychological pressure of this vacuum becomes so intense, so physically uncomfortable, that their survival instinct panics. They feel an overwhelming, frantic urge to break the tension, and that is exactly when they destroy themselves. Again, a dramatic, wide angle cinematic shot focusing on the intense psychological gap between two individuals across a sleek modern corporate desk, where the background fades into deep shadow, highlighting the heavy, unshakable tension of total silence. When the strategic social vacuum sets in, the liar's brain hits a critical breaking point. In normal social interactions, humans rely entirely on a natural rhythm of verbal and physical cues. We speak, the other person nods, validates our statement, or counters it with their own view. This predictable feedback loop gives a liar absolute comfort because it allows them to gauge in real time whether their deception is successfully landing. But when you completely remove that feedback, you throw them into a terrifying dark room of total uncertainty. They look at your blank expression and unblinking eyes, and their mind begins to spin out of control with a single looping question: what does he know that I don't? Because human psychology is evolutionary hardwired to despise tension and ambiguity, the silence becomes physically painful for them. Their brain perceives the quiet room as, as an active threat. To relieve this unbearable, the liar will make the fatal mistake that every cornered suspect and deceptive professional eventually makes. Go. They will start talking again without ever being asked a question. They falsely assume that if they just provide more context, more background stories, or more unnecessary explanations, they can finally fill that empty space and force a predictable reaction out of you. This is the exact moment they walk directly into your trap. Watch closely as they begin to over explain. Because they are operating out of pure panic, they will suddenly introduce bizarre, hyper detailed alibis that nobody even questioned. They will start justifying actions that you hadn't even accused them of yet, desperately trying to patch up imaginary holes in their story. Their voice pitch will likely rise, their speech will accelerate, and their body language will completely break down. They might nervously touch their neck, adjust their clothes, or look away rapidly in their desperate rush to fix a problem that your silence created. They will inevitably mess up their own timeline, directly contradict their previous statements, and reveal the very truth they were trying so hard to bury. A cinematic dimly lit profile shot of a man under intense psychological distress, adjusting his collar with a trembling hand, his eyes wide with anxiety as a single drop of sweat runs down his temple, ooh, capturing the exact moment of verbal collapse. The brilliance of this technique lies in a fundamental rule of human nature. An innocent person handles silence completely differently than a liar. If someone is telling you the absolute truth and you stare at them in cold silence, they will eventually get confused, annoyed, or or even offended. They will ask you directly, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Or "Do you not believe me?" Their conscience is clear, so they have no internal chaos to hide. But a liar cannot offer that genuine, clean reaction. Because their mind is already flooded with guilt, your silence acts as a mirror that reflects their own deception right back at them. They interpret your quiet gaze not as confusion, but as a definitive judgment. By refusing to speak, you force them into a state of cognitive overload. Their brain is already exhausted from maintaining the fake story, and now it has to analyze your silence while simultaneously inventing new details on the spot. Under this extreme pressure, their defense mechanisms shatter. The more they talk to fill the void, the deeper they dig their own grave. They will start throwing out phrases like, "I know it sounds crazy, but," or "to be completely honest with you," dot, which are classic linguistic tells that their subconscious is trying to validate a failing deception. You haven't yelled, you haven't produced a single piece of evidence, and you haven't even accused them of anything. They are actively exposing themselves simply because they cannot survive the weight of their own anxiety. Okay. This is the ultimate mastery of psychological leverage. In a world where everyone thinks power belongs to the loudest voice in the room, true authority belongs to the one who can control the space through restraint. When you weaponize the strategic social vacuum, you don't waste energy arguing with a dishonest person. You simply create an empty room, step back, and let their own fragile ego do the heavy lifting. By the time they finish scrambling, their contradictions will be so glaring that they will have no choice but to drop the act entirely. They will realize that the only way to escape the torturous quiet you've created is to finally tell you the absolute, unvarnished truth. A stark, powerful close up of a leader's unblinking eyes, completely calm and analytical, reflecting the subtle glow of a computer screen, embodying the supreme confidence of someone who has absolute control over the room. Without speaking, when you master the art of the strategic social vacuum, your entire perspective on professional and personal conflict undergoes a profound transformation. You stop viewing deception as a personal insult or a stressful hurdle that you need to aggressively fight over. Instead, you begin to see it as a mechanical system operating under immense friction, a system that will naturally overheat and break down if you simply deny it the cooling fuel of a verbal reaction. You realize that the highest form of authority is not how effectively you can break someone down with cross examination, but how cleanly you can allow them to break themselves down through their own lack of restraint. This is the brilliant, enduring core of high level psychological engineering. It is not about using parlor tricks to manipulate people for cheap victories in meetings. It is about practicing an elite level of emotional discipline. In a modern corporate and social landscape where almost everyone is desperately fighting to be heard, projecting their insecurities, and exhausting their energy to win arguments, your ability to remain perfectly still makes you a rare, magnetic, and deeply intimidating force. While the liar is burning massive amounts of mental calories trying to manage their deception, your silence signals absolute security, absolute knowledge, and absolute control. And get the rule of the psychological pivot. Never exhaust your own social capital trying to pull the mask off a liar. Simply withdraw your verbal feedback, create an empty vacuum, and let their own panicking ego tear the mask off for you again. By utilizing the confrontation trap defense, understanding the intense neurobiology of silence, And forcing the verbal spill, you achieve total tactical dominance over the social field without ever raising your voice. The people around you will notice that deceptive individuals mysteriously stumble, over explain, and fold the moment they enter your orbit. They will see that you don't get triggered, you don't get defensive, and you never get pulled into the mud of petty arguments. As you carry this cinematic blueprint into the high stakes arenas of your life, remember the quiet rules of the game. Let the insecure professionals talk themselves into circles while you maintain the unshakable power of the silent architect. A dramatic, cinematic wide shot of a powerful figure calmly standing by a floor to ceiling glass window overlooking a vast, dimly lit city skyline at dusk, their silhouette projecting an aura of absolute control, peace, and untouchable authority. Eno